engaged in another session in regard to our budget hearings. This evening, we're going to be dealing with inspections, economic development, Main Street, BIDA, fire administration, suppression, EMS, and SPLOST, the GICC special district tax, the convention center and Gateway Arena, and other considerations as well. So with that, I will turn it over to our city manager, Terrence Moore.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Good evening and welcome. So I think Mayor Melly Broom did an excellent job in terms of conveying the purpose of this meeting. However, I do have a slight deviation, and that is in relationship to the convention center and Gateway Arena. As we discussed a week ago today, April 22nd, direction was offered to arrange or revisit the various enterprise fund operations, and that does include the Georgia National Convention Center and the Gateway Center Arena at College Park. So not a great deal of information or discussion will likewise take place to that effect this evening, as we are preparing recommendations for your review and consideration to take place 1 week from today, Wednesday, May 6th. However, I did ask Mercedes Miller to please join us in her capacity as Executive Director to address any general thoughts or observations either of you all may have in preparation thereof. I will have a couple other announcements at the conclusion of today's program. Likewise, we are at liberty to proceed with the Department of Inspections to address any specific questions or observations either of you all may have. And Oscar Hudson, Director of Inspections, is with us for this engagement. Please.
Terrence had one question for Oscar. It didn't even merit a heads up. On page 1 of 3, which is page 5 in the full document, the last line at the bottom of the page, R&M buildings, it was in there for 10,000. It got cut to 100 or cut to 0. But Oscar doesn't really have a building to maintain per se. So I just wondered what that was that got cut out.
There were a number of enhancements that were being contemplated for the Department of Inspections. We are making a few modifications right now in the current fiscal year to provide a more protective environment in this regard. So given the current state of austerity measures, direction was offered to not proceed with any additional enhancements to the office environment.
Okay, sounds reasonable.
On page 2 of 3, line 52, 55, 10, the consulting fees have also gone from department requested $25,000 to 0.
Yes, the city manager has moved that account over to code enforcement for the police department.
I see. Okay.
And Madam Mayor, when we discussed the police department budget last week, we did talk a little bit about that in the code enforcement section. So that was briefly touched upon, but previously, yes, that had been a function of the Department of Inspections. And so it simply coincided with the reorganization that took effect over a year ago.
Okay. And demolition, we have in the 2020 amended budget, $400,000 for demolition. I am presuming that is in relation to the hotel. And or wait a minute, no. There's a request for it in the 2021 budget as well, but we've got $50,000 for it.
That's the houses that you tear down, isn't it, Oscar?
Yes, it was for to tear down apartment complexes, the ones that I will find non-compliance, that were abandoned, blighted properties, and I think the city manager feels as though that we're going through this economic depression here. We're going to just postpone that and knock it down to 50,000.
Oscar, how many houses did you tear down last year?
I didn't tear down any last year.
None last year.
None.
I know one year you tore down about 3 or 4.
That was a year before that, yes, sir.
Okay.
I do have some on the. I do have some homes on the chopping block, but I think 50,000 could take care of at least 4 of them. But nothing commercial wise.
Okay, so we had
Okay.
$400,000 in the amended budget for it. We've used 18,550. What did you have on the horizon? I mean, did you have any particular projects on the horizon that
Yeah,
necessitated
uh,
that 400?
yes, we were going to try to demo the old veterinarian building and dry cleaners over here, Jamestown Plaza. There's 2 abandoned buildings over here. And I was going for 5271 West Fayetteville Road, which is West Cove Apartments, but those are being rehabbed.
Okay.
I like to have a cushion there just in case of those emergencies that do come around that unforeseen. So we can knock down things that are blighted.
And I would agree. I think that we need something in there, and I'm hearing from you that you think 50,000 is an appropriate cushion for that.
It's only for homes. No, ma'am. I feel as though that's too low to try to take care of an emergency situation.
Okay.
I would say 200,000. I can get by with 200,000 if that's appropriate.
Okay.
If y'all see that as appropriate.
Well, Oscar, the couple of homes that I had in mind that were, in my mind, in line for tearing down, they'd come back several months ago and started rehabbing them. You probably know one of them on Lyle. I won't give out the number or what have you, but they've come back and taken care of that. So if they keep it up, then that's when we won't have to tear down.
That's true, but what I'm looking at, Councilman, is that with this is not an economic recession. It's a pandemic recession, and people are still building. But I'm finding out through the contractors that the lenders are now kind of holding back on lending money out.
Mm-hmm.
So this may turn out to be something else, to where some homes that I want to knock down will not get those repairs or buildings.
Yeah, well, then we'll take them down wherever they are.
Okay, so we can always come back for a budget amendment if you like. We can do that for those emergency situations. But $50,000 will give me about 4 homes to knock down.
I think that's probably reasonable for now. I don't know about anybody else.
I mean, for now, yeah. I would love to say, hey, we can go ahead and already put that money into your budget. But there's just so much uncertainty at this point that I think we have to handle it on an emergency basis, which I don't want to do, but I think at this point it is probably the prudent thing to do.
Okay.
But I hear you. So when you come back for that on an emergency basis, you can say, I told you so, Mayor. I'm giving you that latitude.
All right, I'll take it.
I don't have any other questions.
Nor do I.
What on the wait, hold on. Actually, I apologize. Let me go back to 526130. Miscellaneous services. It looks like what 526130. Look at it on page 8 out of 215.
Okay. That is for Sabrina. Can you help me out on that one? 52.
Well, that's Christmas decoration.
Employee holiday luncheon.
Yeah.
Back to school, Gaudi Fest, Fall Festival, Ward 4.
What is your department doing for the $600?
We contribute to those. Those are considered city functions, and that's what we contribute towards those functions when they come around. $600 each. We have to pay for the employee holiday luncheon,
Okay.
each department. And the Christmas parade, the back to school for Ward 2, Gobby Fest, I don't know if they're gonna, Councilman Allen's gonna do that again. And the Councilman Gates, Ward 4 Fall Festival.
Does it make sense to have money for those events in your budget as opposed to, it just seems, I mean, is your department literally handing over $600 for each of those events? Is that there's a transfer that's happening, or?
Yes. For the Christmas decoration, we buy stuff for the parade.
Okay.
The holiday luncheon, we have to pay for each department for the holiday luncheon at GICC.
It's
Okay.
a contribution from that department. Each department works to make a contribution. So it's not all from Department of Inspections, Mayor.
For each of these events? Or?
Yes.
No,
Okay.
no, just for the holiday luncheon is what he's referring to. The other events are separate. Not every department has that budgeted into their account.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say. How did I miss this on every other
Yeah.
department?
that's-
Yeah.
It just seems strange to me, but
One would think it would either be pooled in one location or it would be spread evenly across the departments depending on the number of employees that they had, at least for the holiday luncheon. And you have a very small number of.
No, 'cause when the bill is paid, I pay it out of one account, so I don't allocate it across the board. For
Okay, so,
everything. As far as the luncheon, I do not allocate that across the board. It's charged to one account, which is a non-departmental account for city events.
so inspections is supporting the whole holiday luncheon?
Not for $600, but what I'm saying.
Well, that's where I am. It's too big for the number of people that he has there if you allocate.
No, I'm not
based on-
allocating.
And I know you say you're not allocating, so who's the other lucky department, other departments that contribute?
None. I charge it to a non-departmental account for city events. It's basically in a separate account away from everybody. So
Okay, so then why is Oscar have anything for it at all?
that's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
Maybe he has a separate holiday luncheon for his staff. I don't know.
Oscar, just to clarify, I believe that's what we're talking about, correct?
Okay, let's knock that out. The $600 for that then, because that's for the holiday luncheon. But I thought that we were paying. They said that each department had to pay for a holiday luncheon.
That was the
what
case
I
once upon a
was
time.
led to
So over the last couple of years, to Thea's point, it's been coming out of a non-departmental account and we allocated based on that. Previous to that, previous years, going back, ladies and gentlemen, it was separately allocated by respective departments. And so Oscar's department is still in that place. It doesn't need to be, because again, we have the non-departmental allocation to take care of those expenses and we coordinate with everyone.
Then we need to take it out of there, I guess.
Absolutely, we found some money.
You found $600 on that basis.
well, I mean,
Take down.
I mean, does every department have earmarks for these festivals as well, or how does
No.
that work?
I don't know if I know every department doesn't have it because I know finance and accounting and other departments that don't, but there are some departments that do. Power may have it. I don't know if Mercedes has it in her budget. No, she doesn't. But I know there's probably other departments that do, but not all. Did they detail it? Some may have not.
I mean, if the city is going to contribute, I'm having trouble understanding the purpose of parking money for these festivals in this department. And I'm just trying to understand, like, if our intent is to fund these these events. I don't have an issue with that. I just don't know why it's here.
Is there, Mayor, based on a years ago practice when it was contributed by individual departments? So there's really not a need for it to be here any longer.
We need to take it out then.
Correct.
Just take it out.
Correct.
So we found
Wait, wait.
$2,400.
Well,
Wait,
let me
Oscar, you're trying to say,
let me also chime in, Dan. Let's back up to previous fiscal budgets with like the events out at the senior event. A lot of those events have been paid for and may continue to be paid for if we need to just go back through all of these departments. Because Ken, the senior event that was so successful, most of that was paid for by departmental money, probably even recreation. So if that's the case, we need to go back and look carefully at all these departments and what departments may be contributing money directly or indirectly.
I think it would make more sense to, I mean, if we just have funds for, I mean, accounts for each one of these events, if that is what the city chooses to do. It just seems strange to me to have, you know, a couple $100 in several departments that are going towards the same thing.
That could be across the board. I mean, even the mayor's ball. I was going through those numbers. I see 1,000 coming from the city manager account. I see 1,000 coming. I see departments have been contributing in different ways. Are we getting ready to sit here tonight and figure out how to do this right now, or are we gonna come back and do this via an accounting method? How are we doing this? Are we gonna pick and choose?
Well, you know, you can fault me for not having seen it in other places. I certainly didn't see anything in regard to the mayor's ball in this budget because I don't plan on having a mayor's ball with city money. But I just want us to have a uniform way in which we are looking at these events. As I said, I don't have a problem with the events, but it just seems strange that we're parking money in each department for.
Haven't we agreed to take the $600 out? If there are any other questions on this item, I'd like to move forward. We're taking the 600 out, correct? And
Are
we'll
we
be
taking the
taking a look
600 or are we
at it.
taking 3,000 out?
We're taking out.
Why aren't we taking it all out?
Right,
Uh,
that's what I'm trying to clarify.
Take the 3,000 out.
I think we
Chris-
take it out. I think we take it all out and we put it in one bucket, in one department or one area. We decide what that is, and we put it in that area.
I
If we
agree.
decide to do it, you know.
Yeah, makes more sense.
Oscar, you're trying
Chris,
to say something and I didn't mean to.
that's fine. Our Christmas decorations for the Christmas parade where we decorate a float. We participate in it basically every year.
Okay, if the department's doing something on its own, that makes sense to me.
And that's $600, right?
That's coming, that is the Department of Inspections float, right?
Yes.
That makes sense. It's a department endeavor. These other things just seem to bleed into citywide events. And I'm not quite understanding the rationale for parking the money in various departments.
Okay.
Is the employee holiday luncheon, is that your department's luncheon or is that for?
That's the
A
one, the
city-
GICC, right?
GICC. So we,
Yeah, so
so we down from $3,000 to $600.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or observations concerning the Department of Inspections? If not, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to excuse Oscar Hudson for the evening and to now proceed to the Department of Economic Development. Mayor Molly Broom, are you okay?
I'm fine.
As far as inspections, I mean.
I'm fine.
Okay, Councilman Clay,
Good.
Councilman Gay,
Here.
Councilman Taylor, and Councilman Allen.
I'm good.
Okay, very well. Oscar, you have a good evening and stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to see you back.
Bye. Thank you, sir.
Observations and thoughts relative to the Department of Economic Development. Please feel free.
I've got a question on 526230.
What page?
That's
Convention
page 24 of 215, page 1 of 2.
1 of 2. Conventions and meetings, you know, you're talking about 9,000 so far this year, which eliminates to about 12,000 or 13,000. And you had planned 11,000 and all of a sudden 0. And I would think for economic development, meetings, conventions, I would think those are important things. I didn't know why that was, how that was.
All
I
right.
had the same thing, Ken. In fact, I said no.
Right.
We've got to participate in something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, give you an explanation for that. No, we would have probably hit right at about, $12,000, $13,000 this year, but most of the meetings that happen in the fiscal year happen towards the end of the year, from March timeframe until June 30th. So that's why we have not spent that money yet, of course, because of COVID-19. But in addition to that, when I had to cut my budget 12-13%, I looked at, we have personnel, we have benefits, and then we have some other items like phones, operational type activities, which we need phones. We're going to have to, there's certain things that we just cannot cut. And when it came down to it, travel went away.
Advertising.
Yes, yeah. And we do need to travel, but at the same time, when it came down to budget cuts, we're cutting down to the bare bone minimum. We're going to be very, very limited over this next fiscal year unless things change kind of drastically and we have maybe the economy gets back online. But I didn't want to cut it. It is very important. We didn't put it in the budget because it was a cushion. We put it in the budget because it's actually used to go about the business of the city. And I apologize for my picture not popping up. Something's wrong with my video. So you have my screenshot as I'm on an airplane.
I think we should have something in for conventions and meetings. If we're going to come back, and the whole area is an important source of going forward with the city, I don't see how we can have it set to nothing.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a proposal here, or at least float a thought about the auto allowance at 526240, page 2 of 2, 25 of 215, is a change of 67%. Can we perhaps keep it at where we are in 2020, that $4,000, and give a little bit to travel, maybe $2,000?
Actually, Mayor, the $6,000 city manager recommendation is based on the Director of Economic Development's compensation package, including a $500 a month car allowance.
I see. Okay,
Well,
so that is.
Yeah.
I had a comment on the previous page with regard to the mileage reimbursement, which I think is the same thing you're talking about as a car allowance.
It's
And
different.
he's already spent this year $400, and it's been set to 0.
Yeah.
And if you linearize what he had spent this year, that would be $533 for next year, as opposed to 500, which was in the proposed budget. And so I certainly don't see how it could be cut to 0. So if maybe this other line item you're talking about is the same thing, I don't know, but I don't see how we can not give him any reimbursement for car mileage.
Let me clarify that for you, Councilman Clay. The $6,000 that the city manager is talking about, that's my car allowance, $500 per month for car allowance. But the extra line item, the $533, that's actually for Tasha
And my new admin assistant, Tasha, travels around town also, and she gets mileage reimbursement. I have a car allowance. So that's the
Okay, well-
distinction between the two.
All right, well then, because I had a question on that one, and the same thing holds true for Tasha. If she's
Right.
going to be squiring developers around, she's going to need reimbursement for her mileage.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It can't be set to 0 is what I'm saying.
Agreed.
Well, we would definitely be interested in having money there to reimburse her for expenses. What was going to happen with no money being there is that Tasha was going to be at City Hall and in her office meeting with people, which it's more productive if she's out and about and we can spread our efforts evenly and cover more ground versus have everyone kind of in one location. So each year she takes on more and more responsibility, and she's able to weed out and to actually talk to people, clear people before they actually sit down with me to make sure that it's really worth my time actually working with various individuals. So we really do need a mileage reimbursement for Tasha, and also with Miss Abritha, from time to time, she'll have to pick up supplies. She'll have to pick up food for various meetings and functions. It's just a number of different things you can think of that a person that's going to be also your admin assistant would need to take off and do, and you'd rather them not do it on their own dime.
I think
What you had in there of $500 looked like the right amount. If you linearized where you are based on what you've spent this year,
Yes, sir.
it may be less than that next year because of reduced activity, but maybe you cut it down to 300 or something. But I think we need something in there.
Yes,
I think we
definitely.
do.
Well, 300 would be sufficient. And like I said, if we find out that activity is a lot more robust than we had expected, and if it's mid-year and the economy is picked up, we may come back for, a budget adjustment. But we need something that line item. 300 would be sufficient.
I'd
Here's a
like to make
proposal,
a
and I
recommendation.
know I'm splitting hairs here, but we've been talking about mid-year adjustments all the way through here. So, I mean, throughout the entire conversation about the budget process. So why don't we just do 50% at 250 and then see how things are going mid-year?
That's fine. That's fine with me.
I'm not trying to shave off the 50, but it just sort of,
That's
we're
fine.
going to be
Well,
in a position.
I would suggest we apply that to everything we come along. So it's a nice, simple rule.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
I wouldn't either.
Okay.
I think you need that money, and I think she's going to need more than 250, but that's when we come back and we look at it again. So
Right.
Yes, sir.
what are we going to do about the conventions and meetings? Are we going to change that at all?
Well, are we going to go 50% on that one too?
My argument, I know we just said we're going to look at this across the board, but given the state of travel right now, I don't know that we need to necessarily look at that one at 50%. I think something needs to be there, but I think that we can expect that there's going to be reduced travel.
I guess I'm homing in on the fact that he said that most of that gets spent near the end of the year.
Right.
And by the end of the fiscal year, travel will be reduced. But if it all occurs at the end of the fiscal year, then, or most of it occurs then, if you cut it 50%, then 50% would be probably adequate.
About
Just a
50% of the 2020 amended to make it, as opposed to 5,550, like just 5,000.
5,000 is fine.
Yeah.
What are we getting from LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is what we're getting from LinkedIn is that whenever I'm going out and let's say, for instance, we have a newspaper article come out about 6 West or a development or something within the city of College Park. And I want to track exactly whenever my name appears in the paper, online, even on television, if somebody actually looks me up in LinkedIn, my LinkedIn account is a business account. That provides me the ability to see who's looking at me. I might find that it is Walmart, or I might find out that the individual is from Lidl, a grocery store. In turn, whenever companies are researching you, what you do is I reverse that and I actually go after them and I find out who has actually looked at me, and then I provide information and I actually direct market to those particular companies, as opposed to just going out and trying to shoot a shotgun into the air hoping I hit something. It's a more razor sharp, my attempt to go after those individuals that have interest in the city of College Park. So it is very valuable in that it provides me more insight on, okay, I didn't know this particular company might have interest within the city of College Park, but it's a tool that I've been using for a number of years and it has proved to be valuable.
Got it. Thank you.
Welcome.
And advertising, you feel good about bringing that to zero?
Pretty much my initial budget that I submitted, I was comfortable with that. So anything that's with a zero on it is just my attempt to be able to cut the percentage of dollars from my departmental budget so that we would be able to continue to operate. But when it comes down to marketing, not as much money has to go into marketing and economic development, because we have the city website, we have social media, and we have some marketing materials for economic development. Most of our marketing dollars is used within the Business and Industrial Development Authority. So you'll see that me not having any marketing dollars within economic development, that I'm going to be within my Business and Industrial Development Authority budget. I'm going to see if I can't make ends meet through using marketing dollars in that particular area, just not doing as much of it, if you understand what I'm saying.
So advertising, you feel good with zero being in there?
Yeah, we really don't need, we don't do any advertising. That not just for economic development. Like I said, some marketing materials as far as advertising. We try to use a social media a lot, and we're doing that a lot more. That's why I have the new admin assistant, so she can focus her attention on that, making sure that the community and the world is aware of the good things that's going on in the city of College Park and economic development. Our big focus is, of course, to push 6 West, and that's within the BIDA budget. So I'm comfortable with not having any dollars in economic development.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
I don't either.
Good.
Councilman Clay, are you okay?
I'm good.
Councilman Allen, or Councilman Gay, rather, are you okay?
Yes.
And Councilman Taylor, are you okay? Councilman Taylor?
He can't see you, Terrence. But
Okay.
he did a thumbs up. He's good.
Okay, the reason being, on my laptop, the internet failed, so I had to switch over to the phone mechanism. So I'm operating from the phone until I could get my laptop squared away. So please forgive me for the inconvenience. Otherwise, unless there's anything further, let's proceed to Main Street. Main Street also being a section of the Department of Economic Development. Renee Coakley is in position to address any specific observations, concerns, thoughts you might have. Likewise, we are prepared to go. Any questions, thoughts, or observations concerning the Main Street section of the Department of Economic Development?
Well, we have advertising in there on line 52, 6,000. And it looks reasonable to me. We do need to do advertising, I think, in that area. It's not coming from anywhere else. Contractual services. There's a big increase in contractual services over what it would be linearly on that. You want to speak to that,
I can speak to it.
Renee?
Okay,
Or Renee.
I'm here. I was gonna say, we initially had, we sectioned off 2 additional trimmings of the trees along Main Street because it's deemed to be a safety hazard. I had several business owners approach me about that. And so we had to expense an additional, I think it was about 17,000. This year, we just did an overhaul of all the trees. So that was initially added into the budget along with an additional fall time cutting. But then when we were asked to go back and remove some funding, the fall cutting was removed, but we did leave the landscaping contract as well as the spring trimming in that line item. So that's why it was a little increase for the tree trimming, because it cost us, it was the 16,700. I just put that exact amount that it cost us this year in for next year's budget. So that was the increase.
And citywide events, what are
So-
citywide events?
I'm sorry?
Citywide events, is that the same thing as we talked about with Oscar, with everything being there? Is that?
No, that's something different. So the Main Street Department or CPMSA, we try to hold different events that would benefit the Main Street area. So initially, there were several events included in there, like the wine stroll, things that hadn't happened in the past. So we were trying to start revitalizing some of those things, but once we were asked to make some additional cuts, all of those things were removed from the budget. And I just left for one item that could be moved towards the end of the year that we were looking at to do like an outside art themed project, an event. So.
Okay, good.
So getting back to the contractual services,
Mhm.
you mentioned that you were doing it for safety reasons. Is what's in here also for safety reasons, or is it just for appearance?
So the landscaping contract for the 30,000, that is appearance. That was something that I don't even know why that's in the Main Street budget, but that's always been in the budget since I've been working for the city. So that is a contract for all of the landscaping throughout the Main Street district. And then the tree trimming was something an additional that was not included within that $30,000, something above that amount that we had to go and add this year. We took it out of an area and went ahead and had it done because the trees they were covering the light posts. And so the light was not able to get down to the sidewalk on the MARTA side of the street. And people parking their cars over there in the evening, it could
Right,
be
right.
a little dangerous for.
But we've fixed that now.
Correct. We had the trees cut, I think it was February. They were trimmed relatively low, so they would last until spring of next year, depending on how much they grow to mess with the lights again. So.
Okay. Let me ask this question more to the group. I'm probably the last person that would want to see Main Street look less good. But if we've got to make some hard choices, is there any way that we can cut back and maybe we don't make the decision today, but is there some way that we can cut back on that and Main Street isn't going to look as good? But we're going to save $15,000 or whatever. How scalable is that?
I mean, could we look at it from a 50% perspective?
This
I don't know.
question for me.
This is Tasha. I just wanted to add in some additional information for the, the $30,000. Part of that that's under the contractual services is a contract that is an agreement not only with Main Street, but also the GICC and for the detention ponds for the maintenance of those properties, landscaping wise. So we would need to also verify that we are, able to kind of cease that portion, the Main Street portion of the contract without hindering the other options. I just wanted to throw that out there for you all as well.
Well, Tasha, I commented on that a couple meetings ago, I think it was. Maybe we have to let the grass grow longer in the retention ponds. And maybe we only cut them less, maybe we cut them less frequently. I'm just saying, sooner or later, guys, we're gonna have to make some hard choices. And would you rather have longer grass or fewer people?
What I can do is talk to the landscapers and have them to cut what they're doing in half and maybe not do it so often and see if they can get the prices down to half.
I think that'd be worth looking into.
Okay, I'll get it done.
I agree.
Any other questions or observations concerning the Main Street program? Councilman Clay, you okay?
I've got one question on, well, it's a small number. What is the Dropbox subscription? It's on a 2 of 2, which is 43 of the document. And it's line 526220.
That is cloud storage for documentation, things of that nature.
Oh, I know what Dropbox is. Okay, now I understand how you're using it. I totally agree you're going to need it if you're going to ship anything to anybody.
Right.
Okay.
Any other?
I'm done.
Okay, Councilman Allen, are you okay?
I'm good.
Councilman Gay? Councilman Taylor? Mayor Motley Brown?
I'm fine. No need to ask. I will let you know if I'm not.
Yes, ma'am. Well, out of courtesy and respect.
I
Next is-
appreciate it, but it's good. I'll speak up if I've got a problem.
Of course you will. Yes, ma'am. Next, Business and Industrial Development Authority, a review of the revenue and expenditure picture associated therein. So whatever questions or observations you may have, Artie remains on board to address those along with both myself and Thea.
I sent a heads up to Artie and I got answers to pretty much all my questions, and I don't really need to go through them much at this point. Why don't somebody else take a shot at it if you've got questions?
Line 39, 2000 on revenue. We've fallen pretty far short of where we anticipated we'd be. Give me a little bit of context as to how we've come up with the 2021 number.
Okay, which line item is that again, Mayor?
Line item 39, 2000.
39, 2000.
I had the same
It's on
question.
page 55 of the document, page 1 of 3.
It's the BIDA land sales, Artie.
Okay. All right. As far as revenues is concerned, we've had a couple of closings, sizable closings that was lined up to happen middle of March, April timeframe. Of course, when the pandemic hit, There was a little anxiousness with a couple of the developers. I went before BIDA, had their contracts amended so that once the pandemic had ended, that 15 days afterwards, their due diligence period would expire, and then 30 days after that, we would have a closing on those particular projects. Right now, like I said, if things go back to, I guess, the new normal, we'll be closing on at least 2.8 million immediately, and shortly thereafter, during the, I guess, August timeframe, late July, we'll have an additional closing of 3.6 million. And then there's a couple of the smaller closings in between now and July of about $500,000 total from 3 closings, but these are smaller commercial properties. Never could have, I never could have predicted that, you know, we'd get down to the red zone, you know, the 5-yard line, and that something like this would break out all of a sudden. We don't know where the damage is still being felt with the economy. It's one thing if, you know, if it was something that initially impacted and you could fix it from that point forward, but we're still in the midst of this issue. So it's kind of uncertain as far as how it will affect us in the future. But that's the reasons for the shortfall. These contracts are over long periods of time because they're larger acquisitions over with, you know, up to 50 or so acres involved in some transactions down to, you know, 0.6 of an acre. But that's the reason that we are where we are. Since this pandemic broke out, we have 10 actual projects that are under contract right now. We've only lost one of those contracts since this pandemic has been underway. So that, in my opinion, is very, very good that we only lost one. And this is from a end user that had $70,000 of revenue per month go down to 0. The thing about it is that this particular end user is still interested in the 6 West development, but they have to kind of get through this storm first. I hope I've done an adequate job in kind of explaining things to you and where things are, but we're still in good shape and being able to close soon. It's just a matter of us getting through this shelter in place that we're currently in right now and trying to figure out what the new norm is and getting these hotels and other businesses back up and operating.
Sure. But I also wanted a little bit of context about where we're getting the 2021 number.
Now the 2021 number, as I sat down with the city manager and the finance director, there was, as far as the Business and Industrial Development Authority budget, this budget has borrowed money from one of our
Funds?
Yes, from one of the funds. So there was some closing money that was going to come from some initial sales to pay back those funds. Taking that aside, the amount that we budgeted for next year was projects that we currently have under contract, take away those funds that need to go back to pay that fund. So that's the difference. We have more than the amount currently under contract, approximately $15 million. So with the budget that is actually in our BIDA budget for next year, those projects are already under contract to close. So we are in a pretty good place in being able to hit the mark. And that's not taking in consideration any future properties that we have under contract to sell.
Okay.
Let me ask you
Artie?
about the
Yes, sir.
miscellaneous income. The miscellaneous income, you said you were looking at 35,000, now it's 388,000?
Now, the miscellaneous income, maybe the finance department can chime in a little bit. There's several items that are here in the BIDA budget that are numbers that they keep up with because of various revenue sources that coming through BIDA that I have no control over. But maybe Althea might be able to chime in on the miscellaneous income and some examples of what those may be. I'm familiar with pilot income. I'm familiar with this land sales income and also rental income. But when it comes down to the miscellaneous income, that's something that's kind of out of my purview.
Artie, that was the income from the grant.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I'm sorry. The miscellaneous income, you'll see in another part of my budget where I have, when it comes down to various, I guess, miscellaneous services, that it has increased drastically. I believe up to almost $900,000 for the next fiscal year. What that includes is the $500,000 grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and for cleanup, as well as a $300,000 grant coming from the EPA for assessment. We prorated those particular grants with the amount that we felt would be expended over this next year, and that's what that miscellaneous income is. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Artie, I'm sorry, I have to go back to the pilot income at the top. I know you gave me an answer on it.
Yes, sir.
But my question was, just for the group, will the downturn reset any clocks on successful hotel revenue? And what I mean by that is, I know that there was at least one hotel contract that we put out several years ago, that the amount of pilot income that we received from them could go up if they had so many successful good years over a certain amount.
Right.
And I don't know where we are in that. I don't know whether the window was completed and we've jumped to the higher income, or whether we were almost close to the window completing and we were looking good, and now this is going to pull the rug out from under us. So I don't know whether we should anticipate pilot revenue actually going up. It won't reduce. I don't think it'll reduce pilot revenue, because once it went up, it stayed up, as I recall. Yes. But if we came right to the very end of the window and they had a bad year, it could reset the clock. Can anybody help me on that?
Well, what we can do, that's something that I can do with
Ed Wall would have to be involved in that.
Yeah, Ed Wall and Althea both. Althea could check on the revenues. Ed Wall could help us to find in the contract what those revenues should be right now. And if we've had those, I believe it was 4 consecutive quarters that they had to have a certain a percentage of increase. And after that time, it would go to the next threshold. So we can look into that, and we can provide mayor and council an idea of what that, where we are in that particular, with those contracts.
Question, under pilot income and rental income, is that specific on any one parcel? Can you tie that to any one project?
It was on, and not every project had that, Councilman Gay.
No, I'm asking on the pilot income. Is that specific to 1 or 2 parcels that we've sold?
Yes.
Or can you explain that?
Yeah, we have 2 pilots that's actually going on right now. One pilot is the Gateway Marriott Spring Hill Suites. And then we have the office building number 1 is another pilot. We get pilot payments, and we also receive lease payments for those particular projects. That's why you'll see there's pilot income here, and there's also rental income here, which is the lease. I can't break down the exact amounts for.
No, that's fine. You've answered my question. Let me ask you a question, just for trying to understand this. When there's a pilot income, or rental income, is that essentially a developer who used the city's bond to develop their project, and these are the payments that they pay towards that bond debt?
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Payment in lieu of taxes.
I understand. I'm just talking for the public education. So my question is, when developers come to us, this is a one way that we've been able to get projects done through this pilot project, correct?
Yeah, this is the way that we used just prior to the recession, just before it
Okay.
started, to actually incentivize developers to develop around the Gateway Center. I mean, the GICC. We didn't have any hotels, and it's hard for Mercedes to sell business with a convention center that has no hotels.
Okay.
Now that those hotels are there, numbers are up at the GICC, and now we have an arena and we have more hotels and office buildings. So it was now that the economy, well, I would say now that the economy is better 3 months ago, we didn't have to offer incentives like that to anyone because the Gateway Center had already proven itself in that it was a viable development area where hotels and office buildings would thrive.
All right, I understand. If there are no, I'm sure other people have questions, but I do have a question before we leave this section, okay?
Yes, sir. And since everybody's thinking quietly, also as we move into the next fiscal year, looking at the budget overall with the Business and Industrial Development Authority, there are going to be a number of property acquisitions that will be brought before the Business and Industrial Development Authority board. There have been several of projects that have already been talked about by the city council already. And since we have been involved with the COVID-19, pretty much I've put all of those on hold, but we will have to probably look at the budget again as properties start to close, to give the city council more confidence that we will be able to, in acquiring these additional properties, that we'll be able to cover it. I'm just bringing that to everyone's attention because there was a significant cut to property acquisition, in which I have about $1 million of property lined up already to acquire and be done with it, and to actually, like I said, have it under the city's coffers so that later, when real estate gets a lot more expensive, it's going to be more difficult for the city to acquire these properties.
525510, 525510 consultant fees.
What page, Roderick?
2 or 3 in the budget workshop report.
And it's on the digital page 56.
If I'm reading this right, you
Yes.
budgeted 271,000, and the 21 budget is 994. Can
Yes,
you
sir.
explain those two numbers?
Yes, I can. Earlier, I was talking about there's an area within the budget that included the Brownfield Assessment Grant,
Okay,
which was 300,000. There was also the Brownfield Cleanup Grant, which was 500,000.
okay,
Well, those two line items itself, it was 500,000 that we budgeted in that line item cleanup. There was 3,500 Brownfield Assessment Grant. There was the Airport City website, the Airport City marketing, and the Airport City district plans. There was a couple of them that we're working on right now that's going to be paid for on next year. That's what that huge increase is. So over almost $550,000 of the increase was nothing more than grants that we were actually receiving from the EPA. So it's a wash.
so it's not really consultant fees, it's Brownfield grant. That's what the revenue is, correct?
Well, these are a number of consultants that are going to be doing these.
This is what we're gonna spend the grant money on, the consultants.
Yeah, consultants. Yes, sir.
Okay,
And the total is $858,000 between the numbers that already referenced.
Yes, sir.
526040, the next line item, does this include real estate agent fees?
5260.
526040. Does that include land real estate commissions? By the land sales, is that in that number or is that
It's-
somewhere else I see that?
That's in that entire, it's in that line item, land sales. That's
So-
all.
That's
Oh,
been
oh.
zeroed out though, right?
Yeah, that's been zeroed out for paying agent fees. I'm not certain. But that, no, sir, no, Councilman Gay. That's a zero.
So but we have an agreement with agents on 6 West that they get a percentage for everything we sell. Where is that number at? It should match your
That's-
land sale number.
That's in the land sales line item. Whenever we
So
pay,
the agent fees, okay.
yes, it's built into it. It's all in there because, not only are we paying agents fees, we're paying for titles and we're paying for, anything involved in acquiring a piece of property.
So already tell me the line item where real estate agent fees are included. Tell me that line item.
That would be in land acquisition. I'm sorry,
What number?
you're talking about selling property or you talking about buying property?
When we sell property, the city has agreed to give our real estate agents a percentage, remember? That
Okay,
cost-
now, whenever we sell property, yes, we have an agreement with one broker right now. And his fees would come from the land sales.
Just
sales
give me the
land.
line item.
It's
Which line?
39, 2,000.
Okay. So if we sold this number, 5,151,000, is
Yes.
correct? That's in. So 5% of that is for land, real estate. 10% of that is for real estate agent, and that number is
No,
in
sir.
this 5 million.
No, sir, it's
No.
not 10%. No, there's a sliding scale. With
Okay.
our contract with the broker that we have for 6 West, we have, if the property that he sells is for anywhere from, $1 to $1 million, he gets a 4% commission. If the
Okay.
land sale is from $1,001 up to $5 million, he gets a 3% commission. And if there's a sale that's over $5 million, he gets a 3% commission.
But
So-
all of that is explained in this line item, is what you're saying.
Yes,
So
it's all in there.
all that's merged in that number.
Yes,
I know we spent some time about $600 for festivals. I want to talk about how we putting these monies in these line items. So those monies are in that line item, correct?
yes.
Okay, all right. All right, but they're not in paying agent fees. That's not what that is, correct?
It is not.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's all I have for right now.
Any other observations concerning Vital? I'm sorry? Councilman Allen, are you okay?
I'm good.
Councilman Taylor?
Okay,
Okay.
526130. Did we answer that one? 526130, that's 206,000. Is that thousand or million? What, 206,000? Is that Brownfield grant as well?
6130. Hold on one moment.
That's
been zeroed
that's
out.
actually the facade grant as well. That's a 50,000 towards the Main Street downtown facade grant. We were looking to branch that out for an Old National facade grant as well at the 50,000. And then also we requested to cut the home buyers assistance to lower the budget. So instead of
Right.
that being 100,000 for the employee home down payment assistance program, that was initially 50,000. That's what it was.
Got it. 546031, 546031 land purchase cost. Tasha, what do we have for this year? Is it,
I was
50
answering for my list for the 5260-130 miscellaneous services. Did you want me to go back up?
No, I got that answer. I'm going to another one, moving kind of fast. 546031 on the.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
That's the
I
one I
have
just
it.
spoke to you about.
One
Yeah, that's
million.
the one that,
I just spoke to you about that. That's land purchase cost. I'm sorry, land purchase cost is actually if we're purchasing money within the airport city or anywhere else around the city of College Park. That's what I said, that we had $1 million in that particular line item, and we had it reduced down to 393,000.
All right.
Stating that it's a significant cut and that I have over $1 million in properties are already ready to be acquired, but because of the cut, we're going to have to postpone acquiring these properties, and hopefully that they don't increase in value significantly, or that we can extend the contracts out long enough to be able to close on these properties in the future.
I understand. I have one final question. Thank you. When you talk about this is a question on just accounting. When you're talking about showing the total bond debt, that is that in this budget workshop, the total bond debt? I see the principal and interest payments, but it's the total bond debt carried in this report. Terrence, anybody?
No, it's not.
And how do we show that?
I will be providing you with a report Friday, which will show the total bond debt. It'll give you a summary of all citywide bond debt.
But in terms of the budget, in terms of general accounting principles, is the total bond debt for any municipal report?
Not in the budget, no.
It's not in the budget.
No, sir.
Nor would it be there. There'll be reference information to that effect in the CAFRA document, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or any other ancillary documentation we would assemble. And as Theo talked about, we'll have a comprehensive report and update to you by Friday evening, and I'll talk about that at the end of tonight's meeting.
So,
But
the bond,
isn't it true, Terrence, that at various places in the budget, if you look through the budget, we list the various bonds that are outstanding and the debt service on those?
Yes, we will list the appropriate bond payments because, of course, we have to budget for that annually. So from that standpoint, that is referenced.
no, I see the payments and throughout. I was just asking, is the total bond debt in terms of how do you read these reports in terms of balance sheets and all that? The total bond debt up there, you're saying we don't see it here in these reports. Is that what you just said?
Correct.
And they're in the documents that I just discussed, sir.
The capital.
Yes.
All right, that's it.
Okay. I believe that's everyone. So unless there's anything further, I would like to excuse Artie Jones, Tasha Hall Garrison, Sabrithia, as well as Renee Coakley for the evening.
Let me
Yes.
ask one question in regard to the land purchases, and that is we were just on that line 546031. I understand we have our eyes set on certain land. I am concerned that we are already, based upon what we'd anticipated in terms of land sales, we are falling far short. We're continuing to acquire land, and in order to do that, we need revenue. So if 546031 were to go to zero, what does that, how, I mean, let's play that worst case scenario. Does that completely hamper our ability to get other things done? Can we still move forward on the projects that we have moving forward, or is this something, and I understand that we can speak in generalities here, but I am concerned about a large number like that in light of the fact that we we have a lot of things that are we have a number of moving parts right now.
Right.
What is it now? 393,000?
Yes.
Yes.
Could we like do it like we done some of the other ones? We come to it an adjustment when we cross that bridge when we get to it?
Well, I mean, I'm asking, like, if we did not pick up another parcel of land, does it mean that we can't do? I mean,
These are
Some of
buying
those,
properties.
Mayor,
Go
Mayor,
ahead,
some-
Mr. Kelly.
some of those parcels are, I believe, are strategically important to us assembling appropriate land.
I understand.
And
Yeah.
and the sooner the better.
What I can say is that the highest priority of property to acquire within the airport city area is the property where there's
Wait,
heartbeat.
hold on, Artie. I don't know that I really want you to talk about our priorities.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm trying to avoid the issue.
Right. I don't necessarily want to have an in-depth discussion about it. I think I think perhaps at some point sort of talking about strategically what absolutely positively has to be done,
Right.
and looking at the cost of that is, if that's that 393 number, okay, but if it can be less, then let's consider that as well, because I know that we are in a position at this point where we are, that BIDA is relying upon a number of other funds in order to make these things happen. So just want to make sure that we are being as cautious as possible given the landscape.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I had to say.
Okay, very well. So I believe that concludes all sections of the Department of Economic Development, the Department of Economic Development itself and its administration, the Business and Industrial Development Authority, as well as Main Street. So again, Artie, Renee, Tasha, Sabrithia, you all have a great evening. Take care and stay well.
Thank
You all.
Thank you.
Thank-
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Next, ladies and gentlemen, are the 3 sections of College Park Fire. So that would be administration, suppression, and emergency medical services. So first, any observations and thoughts relative to fire administration?
Well, I have one on page 1 of 3. I believe from communicating with the chief, we don't have frontline hazard pay included in the 2021 budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So,
The reason for that, ladies and gentlemen, of course, is when it was first authorized, it was to continue until the end of the current fiscal year, June 30, 2020. So April, May, and June 2020. And we would likely have to consider direction to that effect after the beginning of the new fiscal year or just prior to it ending. What is possible in terms of budgeting is within police and fire, there may very well be an opportunity to carry forward any savings opportunities from the current fiscal year to help cover any expenses associated with hazard pay, should the decision be made to continue that program for a few additional months.
I think we're at some point, we're probably going to have to wrestle with that. We'll see. I'm not optimistic.
Right.
But we can discuss that, I guess, at a future time. Certainly, we could discuss it the May 6th meeting.
Yes. And that would be my recommendation, quite frankly, because again, in police and fire, typically every year, there are some savings opportunities as we close out the current fiscal year. We can offset some of those expenses or those outcomes and contribute towards making a hazard pay program available for an additional quarter, something to that effect. So therefore, we can accomplish that without having to hard and fast budget additional dollars for 2020, 2021. It will simply be a carryover function is what's being contemplated.
And I think that in my discussions on the local, state, and federal level, that is one area where we actually can get reimbursement. And I think Terrence, you and I discussed that
Yes,
when
ma'am.
we were talking about the scope of it. And that level of reimbursement will probably happen a little bit sooner than some of the other things that we will be missing as a result of the pandemic.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think in terms of concerns, it's probably one of the things that that doesn't necessarily need to be that high, because I think we might be able to realize that sooner than other things.
Yes, ma'am. Any other observations, fire administration?
I have,
I asked the chief if there was any vacancies right now, and he indicated that there were 5. So my question is, does the budget assume full staff, or is it taking account of the current vacancies propagating into the next fiscal year?
The latter.
So you don't have a budget that covers full staff in the fire department.
That is correct. It takes under consideration 5 vacancies as a function of the freeze.
Thank you.
Welcome. And those are all, and Chief Elmore, just to be clear, the 5 positions in question are all in suppression, correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
that is correct.
Any other observations for fire administration, ladies and gentlemen?
We're not going to need to repair or maintain communication equipment.
yeah, I
Line
had that.
52, 720.
What line item is that?
52, 5720.
Thank you, ma'am. That's for the repair and maintenance of our portable radios. And we just, about a year and a half ago, we just purchased enough portable radios. So right now we could bypass it this year, and we can pick it up next year because all of our radios are new. And we have a number of extra radios that we purchased.
Okay.
That answers my question.
Any others for administration, ladies and gentlemen? Councilman Allen, you okay?
I'm okay. That was the only one I had.
Very well. Councilman Taylor? Councilman Gay?
Terrence, I don't have anything.
Okay, and Clay, I think you're okay as well.
I'm good.
Okay. Fire
It
suppression.
looks
I'm
you know
sorry,
what?
Mayor.
I have one more thing. I'm sorry. And I didn't see, I told you I'd speak up if I had something to say. Chief, it looks like we're gonna need citizens to bring you some food, right? We're gonna need to bring officers some food because we're cutting down food and dietary supplies. So I'm putting that call out to our citizens. You know, make sure that our fire folks are taken care of.
We
Bring those extra.
We normally use that when we have long fire scenes, and if they're out on a fire scene for 3 or 4 hours or a little bit longer, we always get something for them to eat and drink.
Gotcha. Okay. So is that, I mean, okay, looking at that, you've spent $2,200 on that so far.
Okay, what
Is that
what
right?
line item is that?
537030. Is that right?
Yes,
What
that's
page?
That is page 66 of 215, page 3 of 3 of the report.
5373.
537030. I'm going to propose that we put more money in there for that.
Okay.
If we are feeding firefighters on the scene and you've already spent $2,200 doing that, we got to make sure that the people who are fighting fires for us are, have adequate nutrition in the midst of their work.
Well, Mayor, if you linearized it, it would be about $3,000. then.
What I'm thinking.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking too, because 1,000 is not near enough.
No.
It's not.
So Thea and Clichette, so noted, let's just identify a $3,000 allocation for that purpose based on the linearization model. Consensus, ladies and gentlemen?
Okay.
Any others for administration?
I do have one, Terrence. Councilman Clay, I see you had recommended $900 to a training line in administration. We do have a new fire marshal. And
No, you answered my question, Chief. 900 ain't gonna cut it, given the answer you gave me.
well, with if it's just for fire marshal, yes, that would be suffice for him. I was also speaking for myself to get my recertifications also for our training.
Yeah, and obviously you need to do that.
Yes.
I haven't shared the 900 with anybody else. I just shared it with you because I was curious as to what was driving it, and you answered the question. So I'm happy with what you had in.
Anything further? If not, please allow us to proceed to fire suppression, which is of course the largest section of College Park Fire, because of course we're speaking about the men and women who actually serve in fire service for our community. So we talked a little bit about this earlier relative to 5 vacancies that currently exist in fire suppression. So that will be a function of the hiring freeze, and therefore there is a salary line item adjustment to reflect that outcome. So with that, we are in position to address or respond to any concerns or observations you may have.
I wonder if your safety supplies are going to be near enough at 53,710. You've got 3,000 allocated, and I wonder if that's going to be near enough.
I'm sorry, Councilman Allen, which line again?
53,710. Three of
I was missing a 1. Okay, got it. Okay, I'm with you.
I just don't think that 3,000 is going to be near enough because we've already spent 4,000 the first 3 quarters, or 4,000 now, almost 5,000 through March. And I mean, the safety supplies have got to be going out the roof right now. So I don't think 3,000 is going to be near enough.
I would say, Councilman Allen,
These are radio remote speaker microphones?
I'm sorry?
These are radio remote speaker microphones? Is that right?
Yes, that's again for the portable radios that we have. That's the mics that attaches to the portable radios that the firefighters carry around.
Oh, okay. So that's not safety supplies as such. Okay.
No, but Ken, you're right. If you go back one page to page 2 of 3, there's a medical services and supplies, and that's been cut to 2,000. We already have spent 7,300. If you linearized it, it would go to 10,000, and we've cut it to 2,000.
But that's pre-hire fees and drug screens and flu shots.
And flu
And
shots,
the
that's
like.
what we use that for. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But aren't we going to be still doing those things?
Well, it
Aren't
looks
we
like some of
going to
this
be
is
giving drug screens and flu shots?
It looks like some of this is pre-hire stuff. So if we're not hiring people, I think we would probably expect. But Chief,
Well,
my
what
name was
about,
not Wade Elm.
I would say
Stop
for the
talking.
flu shots and the drug screens, we need something in that line for that. Yeah.
well, what about if they come up with a COVID-19 vaccine, you're going to need those shots too.
That's correct.
Is there an opportunity to find some synergy with our health insurance provider on some of this? or no? That's probably an HR question.
Short question.
Kaiser usually gives the flu shot for free if they have
Right.
private insurance.
It's something we can follow up on and investigate. Of course, we are working more and more with Kaiser Permanente, but of course, due to the current state of affairs, they scaled back a bit. But Chief, I would ask that we have a discussion with Kristen to make arrangements with our Kaiser Permanente agent to see what collaborations can be achieved.
Yes. If you all will look at the line below that, 537070, that's firefighting supplies. And we did cut that line to 2,000. And that's
And
where,
and it should have been 8,000 if you linearized it.
yes.
Wait, there's foam included? Like putting out fires with foam?
That's correct. Yes, that's our F500 foam that we use for ladders, wrenches, pike poles, different tools and equipment that we use.
So we need foam.
Yes.
Especially.
Isn't
being
it true,
from the
Chief,
airport.
that there's a new type of foam required?
Yes,
Maybe-
we used to use the AFFF foam, but we found out that it causes cancer. We've used that for years, but we switched over to a new foam now that's it's F500 is what it's called.
Is it more expensive?
It's a little bit more expensive. Yes, it is.
Well, I think we should be doing something more than we're doing there.
Agreed.
I think so too.
So based on the linearization application, we can contemplate about what, 8,000?
8,000. Yes.
That's right, 8,000 is what I computed.
Yes, sir. I just did the same. So consensus, that's an additional $6,000 in that line. Consensus, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other observations for suppression?
On page 3, line 537161, the protective clothing, I know Chief commented on that. Is that a place that we're, is it just means that the gear that they have is going to look a little more shabby, or are we putting people at risk?
Well, what we've been trying to do is supply all the firefighters with a second set of gear. If they respond to a fire, they come back, their gear is wet, they have to clean it. They have a second set of gear to change into. And with the carcinogens nowadays that they're exposed to a lot, so we try to at least keep them to try to have them to keep their gears clean. So we did cut that, but I would rather add it back into that because that is an important piece.
Well,
Chief, you
with,
spent
with your reduced head count, do you have any room for slop in there? In other words, maybe you don't need the full amount back, or had you taken that into account that you have 5 fewer positions, for example?
Well, it's just not for the new firefighters. It's for the firefighters the current firefighters. Like I said, we try to at least keep them with a second set of gear. Now the gears cost anywhere from $3,400 to $3,600 for a set.
I don't think this is a place we can afford to scrimp, guys.
I don't either.
Well, I'm curious. You spent $5,700 thus far this year on this.
Mhm.
Why is that? And there was 50,000 set aside.
Well, that was for the replacement. Like I said, that I think got us about 12 sets of gear. And each year we've been trying to replace. Now, every 8 to 10 years, we have to replace all the gear. So it's
Okay.
a rotation schedule. So so that's what we've been doing. Every year we put 50,000 in there to at least get 12 to 14 sets of gear, just to replenish the gears that replenish the gear that's out of date. And also it helps with the second set of gear for our firefighters.
So you haven't done that yet in the year.
Here's
That's
my
why
vote.
it's less.
May I comment? Good evening. This is Ms. Huggins.
Hi.
We recently got the approval for the purchase order, so those items are on order.
Okay, good, because that was going to be my suggestion.
Yes,
Get it done before the end of the year and at least get the 50, that's already been set aside for it.
correct. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Huggins.
Yes, sir.
How about this? I mean, we either reset it to the 50 or, earmark that as something we're coming to on the mid-year adjustment.
I recommend a mid-year budget adjustment consideration because typically this does not happen until the second half, oftentimes the final quarter of the respective fiscal year. So that would be appropriate. And again, for purposes of us achieving a balanced budget, every dollar is helpful.
Yeah, I can go along with that as long as we earmark that as something we definitely want to discuss at the.
Make a footnote to that effect, and we are asking consensus to that effect as well, with the proviso that we offer an asterisk or a footnote that is the commitment. And Chief and Finance, we will all work together to ensure that that happens. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, essentially that's what's happened this year, right? I mean,
Yes, sir.
we're in the last quarter of the fiscal year, and
Yes.
the bulk of money's getting spent. So
Correct. That's why that makes sense. Consensus,
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen.
as long as it's earmarked, nobody forgets. We were all here today. Let's earmark it.
Yes.
Keith Elmore and especially Miss Theresia Huggins will not ever allow us to forget.
Well,
Theresia Huggins, the real head of the CMB. See, Theresia, I tell even the council members this.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor and Council, I have one other. If we go back up to 515080, the salary pay compression,
What page, Chief?
that is, well, it's one of three.
That's page 1.
Okay,
Mayor and Council, y'all did approve the pay compression last year, and total was $294,000. And last year we only gave them half. And this is personnel that's in suppression. This year we had to cut it in order to make the reductions that was requested of us. But I would like to ask you all to, if we could add that back in, so they could get the second half of their pay compression.
And Chief, love you to pieces. However, the recommendation is still questionable because there aren't any other opportunities being made for anyone else in this regard. So what Chief was talking about was the authorization of the pay compression program a year ago. So it was divided into 2 fiscal years, 2019 and 2020, which was taken care of, and a number of adjustments were moved in a positive direction to benefit a number of fire suppression personnel. And the initial thinking was to circle back and make yet another adjustment in which most of the same people who experienced an increase would receive another, so as to be as competitive as we possibly can in the marketplace. And of course, we've offered a similar program in the police department, but given where we are with respect to the current affairs, I'm not sure what message that will send in terms of all the other employees. Other departments.
What was since I was not here for that vote, what was the direction of the body?
The only financial commitment was
approval of 1/2 of it, or was it approval of the entirety?
It was approved for, the financial piece was 1/2 of it. It was about $147,000 a year. So council at that time could not commit to financial resources for a following fiscal year, but the direction was to address that in the next year, fiscal year proposed budget, which is 2020, 2021. So when all was equal, we were recommending to go ahead and do that, along with some other considerations regarding the entire organization, classification and compensation study, et cetera. So although the direction offered in the previous year, last year, was to phase it out over a 2-year period, councils are only obligated, or only ability to obligate, is based on individual fiscal years. So I'm not
I
sure.
think we have to be consistent across the departments.
I do too. I hate it, but I think so.
Much as it pains us.
Yes. Yes, because again, we had recommendations for class and comp study that was separate from fire, separate from police, all of it. And there aren't any recommendations to do anything further right now. And given the marketplace current state of affairs, I'm not terribly concerned about loss of personnel because of that. Otherwise, I normally might be, but in this instance, I am not. Nor should any of us be at this time.
I think it's a slight, I would push back on that a little bit. I understand where we are, and I understand what we can and can't do, and I regretfully agree with both Councilman Clay and Councilman Allen. But if we can, let's take a look at it at mid-year.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. If matters come back, that's absolutely the commitment across the board, definitely in the fire department. So, Chief, when you and your leadership team has an opportunity to speak with anybody concerned about this particular direction, the direction is to reevaluate sometime during fiscal year 2020-21 as we consider mid-year budget adjustments should economic conditions continue to improve, or hopefully will improve.
Yes, sir.
Fair enough?
Especially since they're, needing more people and not getting them. I think it's important that we look at that.
Yes, sir. Any other questions or observations for fire suppression? Councilman Allen, are you okay?
I'm good.
Councilman Taylor, are you okay? Councilman Clay?
I'm good.
Councilman Gay?
Good.
Mayor Motley Broom?
Good.
Before we move on, I'm sorry, Terrence, don't beat me up.
Oh, Chief, I was asking the electorate, not you.
Well, I have been here in our budget for an extractor, and that's to clean the gear. Now, with the cancer policy that we have in place, we have to clean our gear. And right here at Station 1, we have in the budget about $8,000 to purchase. It's a large washing machine that will clean the turnout gear that we have. It's not for regular clothes. It's for the turnout gear that they use. I'm asking if we could reconsider and put that back in.
How much
is that?
It's $8,000.
Where are we?
A little bit over
Line?
$8,000.
I have a recommendation, ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, where are we? What line? Or is it not there at all?
Would be 5476.40. We had taken all of that out, I think.
Chief, let me tell you what I was thinking, if I may indulge everyone. The inclination, Chief, is to go ahead and authorize that administratively for the end of this current fiscal year.
Okay.
I'd like to work with you, and I think I know how to pay for it within the fire department. So as we close out the current fiscal year within this last quarter, we make an intra-departmental budget adjustment to take care of that expense, and I think I know how to do it. So you, me, and finance and accounting will work together to make that happen. And something like that, ladies and gentlemen, because it's less than $10,000, I can approve it administratively. Thereby, we do not have to compromise the recommendations for 2021.
Okay.
So, Chief, you and I can do a little business in the next few days or so.
Okay.
Any other observations for fire suppression, ladies and gentlemen? Next up is emergency medical services. Is Ron Taylor with us this evening? No, he is not.
No, Ron is not.
Okay, so you are the point man, Chief Elmore. Any specific observations, concerns, ladies and gentlemen? This is all pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think we are.
What about the new equipment? 547630, new equipment. You would ask
What
for
page?
37. Page 202 on the,
Page 124 of the digital.
Yes, that was for, we had a defibrillator, which is LifePak 15. Over the last 3 years, we've replaced all of our LifePak. They were LifePak 12s. They've upgraded to LifePak 15s. This was the last one that we wanted to order. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's 5 that we needed, and this was the last one. And also it was a training mannequin. So when we do our EMS training, there's a life-size mannequin where you connect the LifePak to them, and it will give you the various readings, asystole, just the various cardiac rhythms. And that's for our EMTs and paramedics to train on. But I think we took that out. It's down to 0 now.
and you can do without those, right?
Well, you still have the 12, right?
I'm sorry?
You still have the 12 issue. The versus the 15. You've replaced.
We still have 112 that we were going to replace.
Is it functional?
It is, but
Okay.
we have the LifePak 15s on all the other vehicles.
What's the difference between the two, Chief?
The LifePak 15s, if we're on scene administering CPR and cardiac arrest, we could easily transmit the rhythm, a strip, to the doctors in the emergency room. We could communicate with them while we're on scene.
Sounds like I'd like to have that if I were riding in the ambulance.
Me too.
If it's my heart, I'd like everybody to know as much as possible.
The other issue is if you have, is there any difference on the panel, for example? It's a training issue. So if somebody has been working with the 15 and now they've got to go back to a 12, is there any issue with the controls being different?
The controls are slightly different. But like I said, we do have 4 LifePak 15s on the other vehicles.
Right. I would think you'd want to be consistent from a,
Yes, that would help. Yes.
a training
Chief, let me ask you
standpoint.
this. Do you have all 5 vehicles out at once? Is this something like the 15, I'm sorry, the 12 can kind of be like the backup and the 415, like, are you using the 12 right now? Is it in circulation, or are you, I mean, how is that? I'm not asking this question very well. Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
I understand your question. If I'm not mistaken, we are using the LifePak 12 on one of the vehicles. I mean, it's not detrimental. I mean, it works the same as the LifePak 1215, except we can't communicate to the emergency room with it.
Right.
I see.
So
Yeah.
if you want to equip all your vehicles that are used in this kind of rescue work, you need one more like LifePak 15.
Yes.
And how much is the 15? Is it the 37, or is it partially that, right?
It's partial of that. Yes.
Okay.
28,000.
Thank you. But we haven't spent anything on them this year. Is that right?
Yeah, we purchased one this year. So we did.
Because we're looking at 547630, correct?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that would be the same scenario. Purchase order has been created, so we're
Okay.
we're waiting to be invoiced on that.
Got it. Okay, so if it's the same scenario and we're buying it in the last quarter, can we adjust with the understanding that we're going to come back and do this? I just want to put it in right now.
That would be my recommendation, the former Mayor Motley Broom.
If you say you've got one on orders, does that mean that you have 2 trucks with the 12 on it right now and 115 on the way?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Yes.
So with that consensus, ladies and gentlemen, would that be appropriate?
Yeah, it seems like
Chief,
right
is
now
the
we're
difference
down
between the
2 units. And we've been phasing in the 15 gradually. So you put it, some of the rescue vehicles that we have are fire trucks. Do you typically send a fire truck to Grady to transport someone if we can't get Grady to transport?
No, they're not to transport. If a fire truck responds on the call, they're going to assess and perform CPR until the Grady unit arrives on scene to transport.
Okay, so if you put the 12s on, we don't have 5 ambulances. So if you put the 12s on the trucks, which are never going to be used to transport, then you don't need the Wi-Fi capability. I'm not saying we shouldn't get it, because you may need to move one from a truck to an ambulance. But in theory, since you're not going to be driving to the emergency room with it, you wouldn't need the ability to transmit that data. Is that correct?
No. If they're on scene, say for instance at a residence and they're performing CPR, they could send that information to the docs, the ER docs.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So they could do it right there. And we keep paramedics on our fire engines as well as the rescue units.
I know that, yeah.
But I hate to say it, but I think we ought to put it off till the midpoint like we did last,
I agree.
and make us, I think we need special efforts to, and if should something happen to one of the other ones, we need to bring it up and make sure we have them.
That would be my recommendation, ladies and gentlemen, please. Any other thoughts or observations concerning emergency medical service? Councilman Allen, you okay?
I'm okay.
Councilman Taylor? Councilman Gay?
I'm fine.
Councilman Clay?
Good.
Mayor Motley Broom?
I'm good.
Okay, very well.
Terrence.
I'm sorry?
Sorry again. Pulse Point is in here also. It's $8,000. That doing a reduction, we had to add that in. Do we want to get rid of it? The Pulse Point.
It's in here now. Is that correct?
For the
No, sir.
current fiscal year, yes.
But but you've eliminated it from the budget.
Correct.
That's one thing I didn't catch. We've saved lives with that, haven't we?
We have in the past, yes. Now, no,
I'm sorry.
last year, I think we may have responded once on a cardiac arrest. I don't know if it was a save or not, but it has been helpful.
I'm sorry. What's been removed? I apologize. I didn't quite catch the beginning of what you were saying, Chief.
It's an $8,000 expenditure for the Pulse Point program.
Oh,
Pulse Point being a specific program to Chief, explain it to her, please.
Yes, well, Pulse Point is a program where citizens could download the app on their phones. And if you're in a restaurant and someone, say next to you, goes into cardiac arrest, when 911 is dialed, or if you were down the street from where it happens, it will direct you to where that patient is. You have to be CPR trained. It will give you the address of where that patient is, and you can start performing CPR until EMS gets on scene. It also notifies you of where all of the AEDs around the city are. So far, we have, I know Woodward Academy, Chick-fil-A headquarters. There are a number of hotels and businesses that that's on this the program, and I think it would be beneficial to keep.
So Chief, may I ask you a question, sir?
Yes, sir.
And that is, typically the post-point transaction, being that it's $8,000, that's something we can take care of administratively. I would like for us to consider a intra-departmental budget adjustment for the remainder of this fiscal year to take care of the fee for the coming fiscal year. I don't think they'll have a problem with us paying them in advance, correct?
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so that would be the direction, and that's something I have the authorization, the authority to proceed with administratively. So we'll work together on that item as well as the other aforementioned consideration.
Thank you.
Any other observations for emergency medical services, ladies and gentlemen? That concludes College Park Fire. So with that, I'd like to excuse Chief Wade Elmore and Chief Mauricio Huggins.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Ms. Huggins.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You all have a good night.
Thank you.
You
Good night.
too.
Chief Huggins, I said. Good night. Next is transportation special purpose local option sales tax. I emphasize transportation because this is specifically Fulton County. Pretty straightforward, an annual allocation to the city of College Park of $2 million. So this is simply the revenue outcome thereof. And in terms of any expenditure considerations based on eligible projects, that is to be presented to Mayor and City Council for review and consideration on a rolling basis.
Terrence, do you believe that that 2 million is still likely to be forthcoming?
I believe it is. Initially, there were forecasts to be higher than 2 million, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.2 million, 2.3 million, even a little bit better than that based on previous economic activities. So $2 million still remains somewhat reasonable. Take a look at the actual amount for 2019. It came in at $2.336 million. So the forecast was a couple percentage points higher than that. It could have been between 2.4 and 2.5, but given the current state of affairs and the data that we've collected associated with that revenue forecast, 2 million is reasonable. I'm hoping slightly higher, but there's no reason to go higher. You're probably thinking going lower, but given the trends over the past couple of years of the program, I think it's safe.
It may be, yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, observations?
Nope, I'm
No.
good.
Okay, very well. Mayor Motley Broom.
I'm good.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is Georgia International Convention Center Special District Tax. So pretty straightforward in this regard. And this is actually a similar question, Councilman Clay. One might ask, is the $121,650 revenue figure, albeit a small amount, we don't anticipate any need to reduce it any further. Take a look at the 2020 actual at $146,226.45. If economic conditions improve beginning the second quarter, there may be a slightly better outcome than a $121,650 forecast.
Yeah, I had it highlighted, Terrence. I think if it had been able to linearize, you're at 146 now. You can figure it up, be it up around 200, so you lose the fourth quarter here, and you've already cut it back to 121. So it's probably enough.
Yeah, but that's a one-time, that's the,
I was about to say that it's a one-time allocation, so it's not an applicable linearization.
yeah,
And that's where you were going, Thea. I take it you and I were thinking the same.
yes,
Okay, so you can't linearize.
No.
no.
Well, then it may not be enough. I don't know.
Well, based on trends from, again, taking a look at the 2020 actual from 146.20, 226.45 back down to 121.650, we think it's a safe number.
And it's only a handful of properties.
Correct.
Okay, okay. I'm not gonna protest.
I'm good with it.
All right. Any other thoughts or observations, ladies and gentlemen?
Terrence,
This gets transferred out to the general fund or where?
It gets transferred out to GICC.
I see. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Sorry.
well, the group doesn't have to turn back, but I had a question on T-Splash. I apologize. Can I just ask you? You want to wait till we finish?
If it's okay with everyone, please, feel free.
Do we wait till we're done?
I would say go ahead, if that's okay with everyone.
Is what we're doing the projects on under expenses? I thought I heard you say the projects that we're considering in this fiscal budget, are they on here?
No, so all you have are revenues and expenses. So $2 million in revenues, $2 million in expenses. And what I talked about during this particular presentation, eligible projects will be presented to Mayor and City Council for review and consideration on a rolling basis, because specific projects as they are presented are eligible for this purpose. So we typically do not budget specific line item expenditures until opportunities to present them become available.
Throughout the fiscal year.
Correct.
So one last question. The
Sir.
projects that we spent money on in the last year, they're not part of the notes or anything?
They will be reflected as you close out the current fiscal year. You'll be able to see a summary of eligible projects as well as the account balance.
Can you just tell me what some of them were? I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Goodness gracious.
I mean, what generally do we do? Is this the money we spent for street paving?
Some of it.
Some of it, yeah.
Is this
I
the
mean,
money-
there's a number of projects that are listed around the city.
Yeah,
Okay,
the signage, Mayor Motley Brim is talking about specific signage, but there, to answer Councilman Gay,
like the sidewalks on Herschel.
for instance, going back a couple years,
Yeah.
and some street resurfacing activities, some other activity associated with 6 West is eligible for that. And you've also made some authorizations along those lines. So what we can do, Thea, is provide a brief summary in writing to those who are interested.
Well, I have that.
But as far as elected officials buying in on getting projects, what is this more of just I mean, it's not on this budget on what these projects are. So basically what you're saying is this money's put out there and then we just at some point, or is this money already earmarked? It's like for roads
It's
that are.
already earmarked. It's
It
already
is earmarked?
Yes, I can send you that schedule.
So if it's earmarked and if the purpose is to be transparent, why isn't it on here?
But they don't basically outline which projects they'll be working on in that current year. Basically, they're all earmarked, but we don't have a specific project each year. I guess as it presents itself, it comes before council.
Which is what I said.
This is an explanation of the revenue, right, guys?
Yes.
This says we're getting $2 million in revenue, and then we're going to divvy it out during the year and approve it on an ongoing basis. But there's no fixed accounting for it yet because it ain't been approved.
Correct.
I get that. My question is specific on what projects have been earmarked. That was.
I'll send you that.
I understood what you just said. The question was, what projects are earmarked? And if the projects have already earmarked, why aren't they on the report?
I don't.
Like everything else we're looking at for the last 2 hours.
I don't think they've been earmarked yet, have they? Isn't that what
She
Terrence
just said
said?
they were. She just said it 3 times.
We have a list. Wait, hold on a second. Hold on. We have a list of projects, like an entire list that we essentially we have laid out to the voters of Fulton County. These are the projects that we're going to work on during this T-SPLOST term. So I don't know that each individual project, like we look at as the money comes in, what we're able to do. So I think Jackson and Althea work in concert to make sure that but I've seen that list, and I think we can get that list for you as we, I'm sorry.
I just sent you the list. I sent everyone the list.
Great. There it is.
You sending the list? Who emailed it?
To everyone.
Yep.
I guess the only thing I was just simply trying to say is, I've seen the list of projects. There are more projects than money budgeted. All I was simply saying was that Althea said the projects had been earmarked, like sidewalks on Lakeshore, the street at Airport City. I guess all I'm saying is, are the projects specific, or do we have to come back and try and figure out which projects we do?
As they present themselves, they come before the council. Jackson would normally come before the council and say, okay, we're going to work on the Main Street to Virginia Avenue, whatever operation and safety, operation and safety type of construction project. And she'll come before you. And basically, because one, you have to select a vendor, they have to go out for RFP, and then he'll basically state that the project will be paid for with T-SPLOST fund, as you all have previously approved that project for to be used for those funds.
So how do we prioritize the projects? If there are more projects than funding, how do we prioritize the projects in terms of budgeting?
That would have to come from you all, as far as that would have come from Terrence and Jackson.
Terrence and Jackson will assemble considerations and bring them to the body for review and consideration on a rolling basis throughout the fiscal year. And quite frankly, that is the intent of the program administration because of the associated eligibility requirements.
Okay.
Thea, the list you just sent us says for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2019.
Correct. That's what we've used to date as of June 30, 2019. I do have a 2020 budget, but it's not accurate because we have projections in there. So basically I'm showing you where we were as of June 30th, but that's the list. The list isn't changing. So as far as the cost, we've added projections in there between Jackson and I. They aren't actual numbers, so I didn't want to send you that to confuse you as far as the current year expenditures and so on and so forth, because they have projections in that. So I sent you what was audited, the audited numbers. The projects aren't going to change.
Because it's T-SPLOST 2017 to 2021. We can't change it.
Yes.
As T-SPLOST 2 comes online, and there's been discussions at the county level regarding the priorities for T-SPLOST 2, we will be having those discussions as we move forward. But this is the list. Like, we can't.
Right. This is the list that we submitted in order to get the $2 million.
Exactly. Right. Well, even more than the $2 million.
Well, more than that, but the $2 million, they looked at this list and they looked at everybody else's list and they said, we should get $2 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
so
that's the logic, ladies and gentlemen, of the rolling process, because we have to engage this exercise annually with Fulton County. So it's a little bit weird. It's a little bit different from normal budget considerations, normal capital improvement programming with straight city funding in that, because of the dynamic with Fulton County. We have to go about it that way. So it's a little bit different. Thus the application of the rolling consideration process. There's not much more we can do about that, ladies and gentlemen. Any other questions or observations? Otherwise, we look forward to offering considerations based on that eligibility, not to mention the associated process dealing with Fulton County. And by the way, annually, there's an audit for transportation special purpose local option sales tax proceeds for all the cities in Fulton County, along with Fulton County, to ensure compliance as noted. So we have to demonstrate the administration thereof on a consistent basis. So it's all within appropriate rhyme and reason. Any other questions? So, if I may, ladies and gentlemen, Georgia National Convention Center, and the Gateway Center Arena at College Park. So as I discussed last week, the recommendation to proceed with an additional budget workshop meeting for Wednesday, May 6th, 1 week from today. We are revisiting and making ancillary revisions to all enterprise fund operations. That does include both the Georgia National Convention Center and that for the Gateway Center Arena at College Park. So the information that is included in your packets as of today will be updated to showcase reduced expenditures in both areas. So myself, along with Thea and Mercedes, working over the last few days plus, we anticipate finalizing recommendations this Friday. As a result of that, we will forward you an updated document Friday evening. That will be the basis for your review May 6th. So we're talking again, the Georgia National Convention Center, Gateway Center Arena at College Park Power, and the various enterprise operations associated with the Department of Public Works. So some additional adjustments based on the feedback and direction offered thus far. As such, we look forward to getting to that place. However, I did ask Mercedes to be with us this evening to address any specific thoughts or questions you may have to assist in the preparation of next week's discussion. So she is here this evening.
Terrence,
Sir.
one request I would make is that for the GICC, we've just gotten that material and we've looked through it presumably. The other budgets, we have not only looked through, but we've negotiated. We've discussed in detail. We've come up with compromises in some areas. So we put more effort into the other budgets than we have into the GICC and the arena at this time.
Yes.
I would hope that for the other enterprise budgets, that you would specifically identify the areas that have changed. Color them red, color them green, give us a list of line items, whatever, so that we know where to look for the thing rather than having to reread the whole area.
I appreciate that, sir. And myself, along with Althea Fuller-Bradley, as well as Clachette Davis, we had a comprehensive meeting this afternoon to outline specific direction to that effect. And that's one of the reasons we would like to have until Friday evening to finalize documentation to this effect so that we can make copious notes so that one can distinguish the adjustments having been made. So
That'd be excellent.
Althea and Clachette, duly noted, yes?
I have a couple of questions for Mercedes since you're here. We got to ask you a few questions. On the Hawks contract and on the WNBA, are those yearly contracts? Or are they multi-year contracts?
Now, the Skyhouse contract, it starts with 8 years, and after 8 years, then unless one of the parties want to renegotiate, unless one of the parties want to change the terms, then it rolls over until an additional 5 years.
Okay.
For the Dream, it's only a 5-year contract.
And is there anything in the contract that says if the season is foregone, we still get paid, or is it based on the number of games, or how does that work?
Now we get a per game. When they play a game, we get paid for a game.
Okay. So like the WNBA, if they don't play this year, then we're not going to get paid for that.
Correct.
Yeah.
The thing that's unique about the GICC and the arena is that not only do we have a variation in revenue, but we also have a consequential variation in expenses. So if we don't sell hot dogs, we don't have to buy hot dogs. This is a little bit different than the other enterprise organizations. So in a way, Mercedes has a lot more room to maneuver financially. Not that she doesn't have fixed costs, but at least she's not going to get killed by the variable costs.
Correct. And a lot of the staff that's in the arena are not permanent staff. When we use people for concessions or security or front of house, they're not permanent. They're just, they're contracted staff.
So we've got a lot more flexibility. It's going to be an interesting discussion. I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm glad you got an 8-year and a 5-year contract with those two groups. I like that.
Yes.
It helps.
Yes.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, any other general inquiries for Executive Director of the fabulous Georgia National Convention Center and the Gateway Center Arena at College Park, Mercedes Miller? Councilman Taylor. Councilman Allen, you okay?
I'm good.
Councilman Clay?
I'm good.
Councilman Gay? Mayor Motley Brown?
Good.
Okay, again, we'll get into that a lot more on May 6th with the various enterprise fund operations. And again, Councilman Clay, to your point, we'll make it legible in such a manner that you'll be able to distinguish what adjustments have been made from the original budget to the second go around and a third.
Well, I'm more interested in what we've reviewed. The first budget, we never even really looked at. But it's the second budget that we spent time on and invested a lot of thought in. And frankly, why go over that ground again when we can highlight the areas where we made the adjustment?
That's fair enough, and we'll work to accomplish that between now and Friday. So look out for that report, delivery of enterprise fund proposed budget revisions, as noted, Friday evening. So you will receive that more than likely electronically. And for those of you who may require a hard copy, we'll be more than happy to oblige in that regard. Additionally, Madam Mayor, there's one other piece of housekeeping, or for the good of the order, I'd like to discuss. And it's in relationship to Monday's regular workshop meeting, May 4th virtual. So you have 2 items on the workshop meeting. I do not have the authority as city manager to ask these groups to go away, tell them no, we cannot oblige them, but there will be a presentation by representatives of the United Way of Greater Atlanta Motel to Home program. Back in 2018 into 2019, Mayor and City Council at the time authorized a $20,000 allocation to assist with this program so as to essentially provide opportunities for transient residents of College Park to be able to secure a permanent home in the carpet limits of College Park or wherever they can. So in my mind, the purpose of this presentation is to enable leadership from the United Way of Greater Atlanta, who works in collaboration with community activist Mary Sheffield, to talk a little bit about the effectiveness of the program, what was achieved as a result of our involvement, and what were the performance outcomes. However, they are also seeking an additional financial commitment to engage that program for perhaps another year. Secondly, on the agenda is Bobby Wilson, urban farm of Metropolitan Atlanta. He is in position to discuss a little bit relative to what opportunities can be made available in College Park, the community, etc. However, he is asking for a $75,000 support contribution in this regard. My recommendation publicly will be to have city administration to work with both organizations as they make their presentations to identify external grant opportunities, other resources that may be available, and that we simply make ourselves in position, enable ourselves to be able to direct whatever we can in terms of support. Letters of support, congressional, federal, whatever the case may be. We've had a good experience to that effect with Bobby Wilson a few years ago, working closely with our federal lobbyists to get to that place. But again, the recommendation from the Office of the City Manager will be to not allocate funding for that purpose. It's just not the time, obviously.
Terrence?
Sir?
On the Motel to Home program.
Sir?
You will recall when we discussed that, one of my concerns with the program was that the nonprofit that was partnering with United Way to assist in that, I had issues with the financials, that they had not had a good record, as I recall, of donations to their organization. And we had a lengthy discussion on that point. And so one of the things that I would like to hear about is how have they done financially? If we're going to extend it, and we're going to extend it with them, I know United Way was going to put in their share, and the nonprofit organization was supposed to put in an equal share, as I recall.
You are correct.
So I would like to know particularly whether they did put in an equal share, and I'd like to know what their financials have been for this past year in the way of getting donations to raise their share.
Yes, sir. And I do believe that there was a matching financial contribution going back to 2019. I've had a couple meetings. I've provided information letter reports, I believe, on 2 occasions to outline the progress of the program, which is resulting in this coming Monday's presentation. But again, I will not speak for them directly. And I think those are appropriate questions for Monday evening's dialogue.
I'm just saying, make sure that that material is in our packet.
Yes, sir. There will be a packet of material as best as we can assemble. We'll be finalizing that tomorrow.
Well, I don't want surprises at the meeting. I want to be able to look through their financials prior to the meeting.
Yes, sir. We'll see what we can do. So I will.
I'm speaking for myself. You guys can do whatever you want.
No,
but
I'd
would
like to see that as well. I'd like to see that as well, because, you know, if we're going to help them, they need to be helping themselves as well.
Aaron's on Bobby Wilson. Are there any in-kind opportunities that we can support them with, like utility credits or any other in-kind other than external?
I don't know.
So,
That's something to be evaluated, and that would be appropriate direction as well.
so what are you preempting us for a conversation for Monday? What is the goal of bringing it up during our budget session?
It's not a preemption. It is simply advising you that these are 2 financial requests that will be coming down the pike, yet the office of the city manager does not recommend the allocation of the financial requests for the obvious reasons.
Isn't it true that that's going to be on the work session?
Correct, both of them. Those are your
It's
2
not a
requests.
separate budget session, Councilman Gay. It's a work
No, the
session.
question was, why are we discussing it during budget session? Is he preempting us for a conversation on Mondays? That's my question.
Right,
Why are
and
we talking
again,
about those
Yeah,
two?
I mean, I think the goal was a heads up, and I think the heads up has been given, but until we get the rest of the information about it, why don't we wait to have the discussion Monday?
and that was my purpose, Mayor. That was
We're
it.
talking around this, and we don't have the information. We haven't had an opportunity to review, so I think it's premature even for a recommendation at this point. So
I agree.
Yes.
But it is a heads up. I thought it was appropriate very much. Have to do it. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the discussion for the evening in terms of formalities.
all right, we're done. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Good night,
Good
ladies
night.
and gentlemen.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Everyone, bye.
Night.